Welcome to the Abel Speaks Podcast, where we speak to commonly asked questions by parents who have received a life-limiting diagnosis for their child. We're Daniel and Kelly Crawford, and we're glad that you've joined us. Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Abel Speaks Podcast. We just recorded an episode about trying again, pursuing pregnancy after loss. And so now we're going to kind of do a part B to that a little bit and just talk about actually being pregnant after loss and what that experience is like, some things that come up. And so I'm going to let the lady speak to this one. Never been pregnant personally. Was there for it.
Yes.
But why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Yeah, so I would say first, we just had our fourth baby. And so every pregnancy post losing Abel has been different in its own way. And so whether that's like physically or just the emotions that come along with that. And so it can change over time as just like I think that would have been helpful for me to know maybe ahead of time. But with our first pregnancy after losing Abel, I think initially it feels like very vulnerable, especially like how and when do I tell other people that I'm pregnant? And so I think for me, we were like so excited and I think valued life in a way that we probably wouldn't have fully understood had we not had Abel. And so we were therefore so excited and joyful for the pregnancy after having him, but also it also felt heavier and weightier, I think. And we didn't have these like rose-colored glasses on anymore of like, oh yeah, you get pregnant, you have a healthy baby, you get to take care of your baby, and that's just the way it goes. And so I think even just sharing with people felt vulnerable, and it felt like if my excitement wasn't to the level of their excitement about my own pregnancy, it felt weird almost, and like, am I not being excited enough? Or I felt like I had to help manage their emotions. And so it was challenging, I think. We chose to share fairly early with a close circle of people, and then just slowly shared over time. But yeah, I think that was like the biggest or the first large hurdle to get over was just like, how do we tell other people? And then, then there's the other like, what if this happens again? And then also, how do I handle the stress or anxiety that might come with going to appointments, and which can be like triggering for people depending on how that went with your child who had a life-limiting diagnosis. And so I think what I had to do was just every day take thoughts captive and remind myself that, yeah, even if this baby was sick also, we wouldn't write her out of our story. We would want to have the privilege of parenting her in whatever way that looked and however the Lord allowed. And so, and just reminding ourselves of like who is in control. It's not us, which is hard sometimes, and sometimes something I'm very grateful for. But yeah, and just like trusting the Lord with her life and knowing that ultimately He loves our children more than we do, and that He loves us and wants to do things for our good and for His glory. And so I think just that was like a recentering, and sometimes that was daily, sometimes hourly, but was just a reminder of who He is and who we are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super well said. Any other sentiments before we wrap up?
I think that sometimes people feel bad about being scared if the baby is going to be sick, or feel ashamed, or that they are like, I don't want to worry all the time, or I don't want to be not joyful or appreciative of this pregnancy. And so I think we just have to allow God created us with emotions, and it's okay to have them. And so just one day at a time, allow those to come in, and then reorient them to truth if they're askew.
Well said. who's in control and you never know exactly what's going to happen is even our second child, Mayfield, you've referred to her several times, is, the way her delivery went down was like totally, it was on Abel's birthday of all days. It was a year to the day after we had Abel, and she was only at 37 weeks, and Kelly has a placental abruption. And so all of a sudden we're rushing to the same hospital to end up in the same operating room for another C-section that we weren't planning on doing. And even in all of that, like that if there ever was an opportunity for a here we go again, it was that. And to get to say on Mayfield's birthday, January 22nd of 2017, the same thing that we got to say on Abel's birthday, January 22nd of 2016, which is what a sweet day that we're never going to forget. And maybe someday we'll get to a point where you laugh or cry, right? And it's like maybe we'll talk about this with a smile on our face, which is kind of what we're doing here 6 years later. It didn't feel fun or funny at the time, but it's just a reminder of who is writing our stories, who is knitting these kids together in our wombs, and what is our role, as parents versus God's role as creator. And so
I think it might be helpful too for you to maybe speak to what it's like for a dad when you're walking with, you're obviously not the one physically pregnant, but you as a married couple are pregnant, expecting another child, and what that felt like for you and ways that we tried to navigate that together to the best of our ability.
Well, we didn't plan this part of the episode because I specifically said at the beginning that
I know,
I've never been pregnant. Yeah, you are. And yeah, I feel like a lot of what dads process in relation to pregnancy and children in general and babies is like, it's kind of the classic, like, oh, it gets like real when it's like I can actually see, touch, feel, interact with the child. And so I think that not being a first-time dad at that point, the fact that I had experienced like the payoff, so to speak, the experience of Abel's birthday, getting to meet him, know him, hold him, I think helped make it a little more real. Like I could kind of upload that and move it up as far as being invested in during the pregnancy. And I'm always like a big fan, we're not big surprise people in general, but like picking a name, knowing the gender, I feel like that was really helpful and like helped me really personalize that pregnancy and that journey. And a lot of it is echoing the sentiments I think you already said really well, is just going back and recalling what I ultimately know to be true, not just in like a big picture, spiritual, theological sense, but just from our personal experience with whatever little pain or memories or things that are hard that come up, that the sweetness of our journey and our experience of knowing and loving Abel is just such balm on those wounds, even when it seems like there's little moments that might trigger or reopen them. So that's probably pretty much not what you were asking me.
No, there was no right or wrong.
But that's what came to my mind. And so that's spontaneous answer to your spontaneous question. And yeah, in all things as a theme in some of these different episodes, just can't encourage y'all enough to do a better job than I did and than we did of just moving towards each other in each and every part of this experience, and seeking to understand, seeking to connect, seeking to share, seeking to be on the same team, even when we're not always on the same page, whether it's with a decision or an emotion or whatever. And so, yeah, I think that concludes the bonus 4 minutes on this episode. And we'll pick it back up next time on the Abel Speaks podcast. Catch you then. Hey friends, thanks for listening in. We hope this content has been helpful. At Abel Speaks, we exist to support families who have chosen to carry a child with a life-limiting diagnosis, and we want you to know that the foundation of that support is rooted in relationships. And so, if you're a parent in this circumstance, then by all means continue listening in, but we'd really encourage you to reach out by sending an email to support@abelspeaks.org. Again, our heartfelt prayer is that this episode has served you in some way and that we might have the opportunity to serve you further in the future. The Abel Speaks podcast is produced by the team at Sound of a Rose.